We're now on page 35 of your working file, the subject of outline properties. Now, while this may seem a simple subject, and it is in many ways, it's a subject that will affect every industry. No matter where you work, this will be important to you. So we're going to have two lessons here on this page. And first of all, I quickly need to recap with you, and a couple of these things will also be new, the different types of objects that we have that we work with and how we can change their outline properties. So the first type of object shape we have is what we call a common shape object, which is being depicted by this rectangle here. Now, the reason it's a common shape object, or you could call it a basic shape object if you wanted to, the point is CorelDraw recognizes how this shape was made and that it was made using the rectangle tool. And the advantage of creating it that way is, of course, we can apply other quick properties to it, such as changing the corners. Or, of course, we can, using the shape tool, make the corners rounder. So we have advantages in working with common shape objects. This principle applies to, of course, the ellipse tool, the polygon tool, any of these shaped tools, any of these tools we use to create shapes. They have advantages to us. We call them common shape objects. The reason why I'm talking about this is to show you that common shape objects, at least on the property bar, allow us to access the outline thickness, the outline width. As we can see here in points, the PT stands for points. I can change the outline thickness by simply using the drop down. The other thing I want you to see is that for every shape type we're about to look at, or for every object type I should say, properties on both the property bar and down here in the status bar will appear. As you can see, the status bar says it's a rectangle. On layer 1, that's the outline color, the fill color I should say, and the outline color. On the property bar, as you well know, the properties, and in this case at least the outline thickness. Well, that's a common shape object. The next object type I want to look at is a text object. When I select a text object, there is nothing on the property bar about outline thickness, type, color, etc. All I can really do is right click to change a color, and that's the only effect I can easily have to my outline. Again, on the status bar, artistic text, fill and outline color is depicted for us. If I move down to these two next objects, I have called it a line object and a curve line object, but actually CorelDraw calls them just simply curves. So either one of these is both referred to a curve. If I click this last object, you'll notice this is also referred to as a curve. The reason is that I took this piece of text and I converted it to curves, which makes it a converted to curves object. If you like, simply call it an object or just an artistic or a graphic object. The point is, I took this piece of text and I converted it to curves, which means that this object now consists of lines and curves connected together with nodes. Let me show you how I did that. I'll just pop this over here. Select that, right click and drag, copy here. I'll shrink it down in size a little. We can still see on the property bar and the status bar that it is text. However, if I use Control plus Q, I can convert it to curves, or up to a range and convert to curves. Click. Now, no longer do I see any text relevant information. It's now simply considered an object that's made up of lines, straight lines, and curves joined together by nodes. If I select the shape tool and I zoom in, as you can see, these little squares here as I hover over that become highlighted, they're what we call nodes. And I've got a straight line and I've got a curve. And in fact, over time, as you learn, we've got a module just on working with lines and curves and shape editing, etc. Converted to curve objects simply consists of lines and curves. I can select a node with the shape tool, I can move it, and I can actually begin to reshape the object. And that's one of the advantages of objects being converted to curves. All right? Now, the reason I've shown you that is because the properties available on the property bar now extend a little further relative to outline properties. Let me delete that, pull these back over here. Now that we have an object converted to curves, or I'll come back to this basic one, the properties available are, I can, for example, change my outline property to a dotted line. I can even add arrows to either end of the line. Now that becomes very handy when creating flowcharts, etc. If I select this one, I can change that to, say for example, that type of dotted line. And of course I could add different types of ends if I wanted to. There's all sorts, electronics ends. Let's go with one of those. And on the other end, I'll add something rather different, a pitchfork. So you can play with that and obviously come up with some interesting things. If I select this object, I can simply go back to let's just go to a normal outline. I can change the outline thickness. One last thing I want to show you. When you've got a common object, you'll notice up here that this will become available, convert to curves. It's the exact same thing as Control Q or going to arrange, converting to curves. If I were to select this, you'll now notice that I have that same set of outline properties become available because it's no longer a common shape, it's considered a curve. Now Control Z, I'll quickly undo that. Well, I said all of that so that you could simply see the different properties we have available without going to the next step. The next step is coming over here to the outline pen and to the little flyout, click, and bringing up all of these additional properties. Let me, for example, go back to my piece of text. I can't affect the outline thickness, but I can very quickly come over here, click, and access one of the preset thicknesses. So, for example, 2 point. Did you notice as the outline thickness changed, the spacing between all of those dots changed as well? Well, that can be a little annoying, which means we need to delve a little further. So what I'm going to do now is bring this flyout out, drag it out here, and I'm going to dock the flyout up here so I've got quick access. In fact, why don't we slide it out into the middle here? So I've got access to everything that is sitting in the flyout here. So I can quickly show you this. Well, to bring up the dialog box that allows us to access all outline properties, I need to first select my object. One of two things. I can simply click outline pen there, over here in the flyout, or just F12 on my keyboard. And I'll do that, F12. And that brings up the outline pen properties. Here is where we can really begin to use the power of outline. Now I'll quickly finish this subject, then we're going to stop and we'll move into our next lesson after this. I'm looking at the dotted outline, and as you can see here from the drop down, there's a number to choose from as we saw earlier on the property bar here, but let's just pick an unusual one. Let's say I pick this one here and I click OK. It's a series of dashes and dots. Let's zoom in for convenience. Select our text, F12 again. Now, let's say it just simply doesn't look right. What can we do? Well, the first thing I want to show you, as I said earlier, the thickness does affect the spacing. So if I drop this back to say 1.5, click OK, well look, that does look better. However, bring it up again. If I drop back to 1 point, click OK, that does look even better. But let's assume the spacing is not quite right. What can we do? Bring up the dialog box again. If we click Edit Style, we can use this little tool here to create our own spacing. It takes a minute to get your brain to think about this, but basically where the black area is, that is the black line. Where the dot is a white space. So as I spread this out, I'm actually affecting the spacing, as you can see. I can click on a white dot and remove it. So I'm creating little dots and dashes. So black is the black and the white is the white. I can close the spacing up a little bit if I want to, and I will lose some dots in the process, but let's say that's what I want. I can replace or add that as a new style. Click OK. We've created a brand new style. So go ahead now, and I want you to just reproduce all of what you've seen me do here, and then we'll move on to our next lesson.